here on Fearless and talk a little WNBA in detail. I've already set the table for this conversation with Maurice and John the Liquidator. Gentlemen, last night was a major disappointment. I thought that was Caitlin Clark's worst performance. I thought that some of her behavior on the court and attitude and energy on the court kind of backed up what Kari Champion was saying about her. Kari Champion's not the right messenger. She's got a racial idolatry issue, and she can't stand Caitlin Clark, and she'd never hold a black NBA player to the same point.
The scoreboard flickered as the Indiana Fever imploded in real time. Stephanie White looked on with a vacant stare as her superstar, Caitlin Clark, completely lost her composure in front of a hostile crowd. This wasn't just a regular season loss. It was a total coaching catastrophe that left the face of the WNBA exposed, frustrated, and mentally broken. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife as the Golden State Valkyries systematically dismantled everything the Fever had built. It was the exact moment everyone realized the coaching experiment in Indiana was spiraling into a nightmare. The disaster wasn't just about missed shots, it was about a complete lack of leadership from the sideline.
Kari Champion's not the right messenger. She's got a racial idolatry issue, and she can't stand Caitlin Clark, and she'd never hold a black NBA player to the same standard. But I do think Kari Champion isn't all wrong here. Let's play SOT 6 over again, and then you guys can. They lose 90-88 last night, 3 of 12 shooting, 5 turnovers, 2 horrendous turnovers late in the fourth quarter, and they treated her like James Harden on the defensive end. They isolated her, went right at her, and
Caitlin Clark's stat line told a story of utter desperation and a lack of tactical support, shooting a dismal 3 of 12 from the field and racking up 5 turnovers, including 2 back-to-back blunders in the final minutes. Clark looked like a shell of herself. This was arguably the worst performance of her professional career, and the frustration was boiling over. She wasn't just fighting the opposing defense, she was fighting her own team's lack of a coherent game plan. When your primary scoring option is forced into low-percentage heaves and high-stress situations without any relief, the structural integrity of the offense begins to crumble from within.
Going all the way back to Iowa, her dad shouting at her, these on-court tantrums, and again, I don't think she drew a foul here, and she's yelling and screaming at the ref, and again, from her dad, anybody that cares about her realizes there's an emotional issue with Caitlin Clark. And it makes me, Maurice, I keep saying this over and over again, a tiny bit sympathetic towards Stephanie White and the Fever organization. Your thoughts?
All right, let's get into it, man. The Indiana Fever were absolutely
The emotional outbursts were impossible to ignore as Clark began barking at the referees and her own teammates. It wasn't the fiery passion fans are used to seeing, it was the look of a player who felt completely abandoned by her coaching staff. Even her own father was captured on camera, telling her to shut up from the stands. This white fatigue is becoming a major talking point, as critics wonder if Clark's mental state is being compromised by the constant pressure and the lack of a stable environment. When a generational talent is yelling at the very people meant to protect her, you know the organizational rot has reached a critical boiling point.
In the room, the coaching, this team looks ill-prepared. They are gassed in the first quarter. What are y'all doing in practice? You have your Golden State Valkyries just played a game the other night. I mean, what are you doing in practice? I'm looking at the practice clips with hula hooping. People are doing all types of stuff that have nothing to do with basketball, nothing to do with being in shape. Stephanie White has his team ill-prepared, a lack of adjustments. Yes, Caitlin Clark's not a great defender. Why are you switching every ball screen and just allowing people to go one-on-one? The Golden State Valkyries would not allow you to go one-on-one versus
Stephanie White's inability to adjust the defensive scheme was the most glaring failure of the night. The Valkyries treated Clark like she was prime James Harden on the defensive end, isolating her and attacking her relentlessly. Instead of sending help or hedging screens, White allowed Clark to be put on a defensive island for 10 dribbles at a time. It was a tactical ISO torture chamber that left Clark gassed and demoralized. A coach's primary job is to hide their stars' weaknesses and amplify their strengths, but White did the exact opposite. She left her best player out to dry while the opposing coach, Natalie Nakasi, ran circles around her.
By that point of the game, it was like, hey, Caitlin is mentally off. There is a mental issue with Caitlin Clark. I think she's admitted it, and I think anybody that's watched her, because her behavior, going back to college all the way through, her behavior and her inability to control her emotions gets the best of her from time to time. I didn't think she was any good in the first half. The examples I showed of like her turning around and yelling at the refs over nothing, it's like, hey, that's when I was like, we got a problem. And then early in the second quarter, she dribbled up court and dribbled straight into traffic. And I was like,
beyond the tactical errors, the physical conditioning of the Fever has become a massive red flag. Sources close to the team have pointed out that the players looked completely gassed by the end of the first quarter. While the Valkyries were flying around the court with high energy, the Fever players looked like they were running in quicksand. This points directly back to the practice habits established by Stephanie White. When clips surface of the team doing hula hoop drills instead of high-intensity basketball conditioning, it raises serious questions about the professional standards of the organization. You cannot compete at this level if your coach is treating practice like a middle school gym class.
When it's carry champion, I think it's ridiculous. You know, are we saying, Jason, are we saying that Luka Doncic, who all he does is bark at referees, damn near to the level of Draymond Green? Luka Doncic has been in the realm of being suspended by the league due to the amount of technical fouls. Why is no one saying Luka Doncic has a mental issue?
Oh, I think he does. I think he gets criticized. I think he gets criticized for that, for flopping and for all the extra stuff he does. There's a lot extra to Luka Doncic. When you think about why Dallas...
Aaliyah Boston, the league's highest paid player, was virtually invisible for massive stretches of the game. For the second time recently, she went scoreless in the first half, a shocking reality for a player making $6 million over the life of her contract. This lack of production from the Big Three is a direct indictment of the system Stephanie White is trying to implement. If you have elite talent like Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, and you can't find a way to get them involved early, the system is fundamentally broken. The talent is there, but the commander-in-chief of the locker room seems unable to organize it into a winning formula.
And the Las Vegas Aces, Paige Bueckers is not as good a player as Caitlin Clark, but I can put together an argument she's a smarter player than Caitlin Clark. And the Dallas Wings are a problem. They beat the Aces last night. AZ had 22, Paige had 20, Jessica had 22. I believe they are now, are they 5-3, I believe now? And they've beaten the Liberty and the Aces back to back. Paige Bueckers, and I don't like her. She's not my favorite player. AZ Fudd, the game.
The hostile environment at Chase Center seemed to get inside Clark's head in a way we've never seen before. Usually road games for the Fever feel like home games because of the massive Clark following, but the Valkyries fans weren't interested in cheering. They booed her nearly 70% of the time she touched the ball. This was a real-world wake-up call for a player who has lived in a cocoon of comfort since her college days at Iowa. Without the constant affirmation she's used to, Clark's mental hiccups are becoming more frequent. She is learning the hard way that in the WNBA, nobody is going to hand you a trophy just for showing up.
She'll argue and fuss and fight with her coaches. She'll argue and fuss and fight with anybody. The book is out. Hey, let's beat Caitlin Clark between the ears. We can't beat her out here. She can hit those logo threes. She's a great passer. We can't beat her on the court. We can beat her between the ears. That's what I think Golden State's game plan was, and I think other teams are going to say that and adopt that strategy. Hey, we don't have to be super physical with her. Let's just take her down here and put her in a little ISO torture chamber and see, somebody get hot.
The contrast between the Fever and a well-coached team like the Dallas Wings is starting to become embarrassing. Despite having less overall talent on paper, the Wings are playing smarter, tougher, and more disciplined basketball. They recently knocked off the Liberty and the Aces, showing that a coherent system can overcome a talent gap. While Stephanie White is busy running experiments on the court, other coaches are running winning sets. The Fever aren't just losing games. They are losing their identity as a competitive franchise. If you can't outcoach a rebuilding team, you have no business leading a roster that features a generational star. Critics are now pointing to Clark's admitted anxiety issues as a potential roadblock to her success under this coaching staff. She has publicly stated she deals with mental hurdles regarding her back and general health, which suggests she needs a coach who can provide emotional stability. Instead, she has Stephanie White, whose micro-adjustments and erratic rotations only add to the chaos. A player with high anxiety needs a clear, consistent structure to thrive, not a coach who benches the hottest player in the game on a whim. The mismatch between Clark's psychological needs and White's chaotic leadership style is a recipe for a career-stunting disaster. The book is out on how to beat Caitlin Clark, and every coach in the league is reading it cover to cover. You don't have to be more physical than her, you just have to beat her between the ears. By putting her in defensive ISO situations and letting the crowd get into her head, teams are finding that she will eventually beat herself. The tragedy is that Stephanie White seems to have no counter move. While the rest of the league is evolving their strategies to neutralize the Fever's offense, Indiana is stuck running the same predictable sets. It's a tactical stalemate that the Fever are losing every single night they step on the hardwood. Some fans are even starting to miss Christy Sides, noting that while she had her flaws, she never allowed opponents to torture Clark one-on-one for an entire game. Sides would at least attempt to hide Clark's defensive liabilities by switching or trapping. Under Stephanie White, it feels like the team is being subjected to a series of failed experiments rather than a pursuit of victory. The locker room morale is reportedly dipping as players realize they are being outclassed on the sidelines. When you lose the locker room, it's only a matter of time before the front office has to make a move to save the season from a total freefall. The narrative around Clark's mental stability is becoming increasingly toxic, fueled by her on-court tantrums. While players like Luka Doncic also bark at refs, they usually back it up with dominant performances that silence the critics. Clark's inability to control her emotions while simultaneously playing poorly is a dangerous combination. It gives ammunition to those who claim she isn't ready for the big stage. Stephanie White's failure to reel her in and provide a calming influence is perhaps her biggest failure as a leader. A great coach is a psychologist as much as a tactician, and White is failing both subjects miserably right now. There is a growing sense that the Fever organization is prioritizing engagement farming and marketing over actual basketball development. From practice sessions that look more like social media content shoots, to road trips that involve attending baseball games instead of extra film study, the focus is clearly off. When your star player is struggling to hit a rock in the ocean, you don't take the team to a ball game. You get in the gym. This lack of professional discipline starts at the top. Stephanie White has allowed a culture of complacency to settle in, and the results on the court are the natural consequence of that lack of focus. Veronica Burton, a player many had overlooked, turned into a superstar for one night simply by exploiting the Fever's defensive lapses. It wasn't that Burton suddenly became an elite scorer, it was that the Fever's coaching allowed her to get into a rhythm without any resistance. By the time White realized she needed to make a change, the damage was already done. This too little too late approach to coaching has become a recurring theme for the Fever this season. They are constantly reacting to their opponents rather than forcing their opponents to react to them. It is the hallmark of an unprepared and overwhelmed coaching staff. The comparison to Paige Booker's is also starting to gain traction in basketball circles. While Clark may have more raw talent and a higher ceiling, Booker's is being praised as the smarter player who understands how to manage the flow of a game. This narrative hurts Clark's brand, but it's hard to argue against when you watch the Fever's disjointed offense. Booker's plays with a level of composure that Clark currently lacks, largely because Clark is being asked to do too much in a broken system. If the coaching doesn't improve, we may see the gap between these two stars close in a way that Fever fans never expected. Let's talk about the $6 million elephant in the room, the underperformance of the supporting cast. Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell are all-star caliber players, yet they often look lost in Stephanie White's offensive schemes. There is a lack of chemistry that should have been solved weeks ago. Instead of building a cohesive unit, the team looks like 5 individuals playing their own game. This lack of synergy falls squarely on the shoulders of the coach. If you can't get your 3 best players to click after nearly 20 games, you have to ask if you are the right person for the job. The physical toll of the WNBA season is clearly weighing on Clark, but it's the mental exhaustion that seems to be the real killer. She is used to being the straw that stirs the drink, but right now, the drink is spilled all over the floor. The constant arguing with refs isn't just a bad look. It's a waste of energy that she desperately needs for the fourth quarter. A disciplined coach would have put a stop to the technical fouls and the histrionics on day one. By letting it slide, Stephanie White has allowed a culture of excuses to permeate the roster, making it impossible to hold anyone accountable. Even the most loyal Clark supporters are starting to admit that she needs a mental reset away from the spotlight. The pressure of being the face of a league that is still finding its footing is immense, and she is clearly feeling every bit of it. However, a coaching disaster like the one we saw against Golden State only makes that pressure worse. When you can't trust your coach to make the right sub or draw up a simple play, the weight on your shoulders becomes unbearable. Clark is carrying the entire franchise, and the straps are starting to snap under the weight of Stephanie White's incompetence. The internal politics of the Fever locker room are also a point of concern for many insiders. With mentions of the Alphabet Mafia and differing social agendas, some wonder if the team is truly united behind a single goal. While every team has its internal dynamics, a strong coach can usually bridge those gaps and focus everyone on winning. Stephanie White, however, seems more like a bystander than a commander. If there is a divide in the locker room, it's being reflected in the lack of help defense and the disjointed passing we see on the court. A divided house cannot stand, and this house is leaning heavily. It's time to face the reality that the Fever might have made a massive mistake in their coaching hire. The disaster in Golden State wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of weeks of poor preparation and tactical stubbornness. Caitlin Clark is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, and the Fever are currently wasting her rookie window with subpar leadership. You only get one chance to build a foundation around a player of this caliber, and right now, that foundation is made of sand. If the organization doesn't act quickly, they risk turning the biggest story in sports history into a cautionary tale of wasted potential. As the season progresses, the ISO torture chamber will only get more intense as other teams copy the Valkyries' blueprint. Every defensive coordinator in the league now knows that if you frustrate Clark early and isolate her often, she will eventually fold. Stephanie White needs to find a counter strategy immediately, or the Fever are headed for the lottery once again. The fans in Indiana didn't sell out the arena to watch their star get bullied and their coach get outclassed. They came to see a revolution, but all they are getting right now is a front row seat to a slow motion train wreck. The ultimate question is whether Caitlin Clark can overcome her own coaching staff to reach the heights everyone expected. Basketball is a team sport, but leadership starts at the top. If Stephanie White can't rein in the emotions, fix the defensive rotations, and prioritize winning over experiments, the Caitlin Clark era in Indiana might be over before it truly begins. The talent is there, the fans are there, and the spotlight is brighter than ever. All that's missing is a coach who knows how to handle the heat. Until that changes, the Fever will remain a disaster waiting to happen every time the whistle blows.